All right. Well, thank you everyone again for joining. It looks like it's 6 o'clock, so we can get going here. Just as a disclaimer, I know it tells you when you log in, but I am recording this session so that we have the information and potentially can share it to residents who weren't able to log in today. So I'd like to just welcome Steve Hunter, captain with the City of Scottsdale Fire Department. He is going to be putting on a little, or giving a little demonstration about the Firewise defensible space around Scottsdale Mountain and the Firewise program itself. And then we'll have a little time after that for some questions and answers, and should be some great information. So Steve, I see you're on. Welcome. And thank you for joining us here tonight. I've got your presentation. I believe everybody can see on their screen. So if we want to just kick it off.
Very good. Thank you, Brett. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Thanks again for everyone attending tonight. And I really appreciate Scottsdale Mountain HOA, as well as Brett, your professional management, bringing me in to do a presentation for Scottsdale Mountain residents. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so obviously, everyone knows we live in the wildland urban interface. That just basically means where population of humans meet the wildland. And with that being the case, we're always going to be in a situation where we are going to be confronted with wildland fire problems. The way I look at it is there's no way we can get rid of wildland fire. The only way we can do anything to protect our homes and our property is to adapt. And the biggest way to adapt is through Firewise USA and the City of Scottsdale Fire Department's program throughout that. This slide just basically, excuse me, explains a little bit of the ESL, which is the environmentally sensitive land overlay. It was put together in 1991. Within it is a easement overlay, which is the natural area open space. I'm sure that anyone who lives in North Scottsdale understands, or at least has heard of the NAOS. Everyone in the past has always said, we can't touch the NIOS. We can't touch the NAOS. That is not true. We can develop a defensible space. And through this presentation, I'll show you how we can work through the NAOS. Next slide. So what is Firewise? So Firewise is an NFPA program, National Fire Protection Association. It encourages communities to work together to learn to adapt to living in the wildland urban interface where we are, and specifically Scottsdale Mountain. I mean, just take a look out your window. You are right there in the middle of the wildland urban interface. So what's the goal? The goal is to create communities that reduce wildfire intensity in communities and neighborhoods and to prevent home ignitions. Go ahead, next slide. So we've developed over the last year the Community Risk Reduction Division here at City of Scottsdale. There are 3 captains that manage 5 inspectors and 7 volunteers through the Conservancy, or the Sonora and McDowell Conservancy. What the Community Risk Reduction Division does is about 70% Firewise, because that is an extremely important piece to us from a protection standpoint. But we also handle threat mitigation with our police department, as well as doing some prevention work within the actual commercial side of the city. So what do we got to do to become a Firewise city? We got to develop a community risk assessment. We got to help residents understand the wildfire risk and engage them to participate in the mitigation process. So Scottsdale Mountain's been doing mitigation for quite some time now. The interior lots of Scottsdale Mountain have been prepared for, excuse me, for wildland abatement for quite a few years, which puts you in a really good position to start and complete the Firewise process. I was speaking to the board the other day, as well as Brett, and my opinion is that Scottsdale Mountain has completed their phase 1 with doing the wildland abatement in the interior lots, and they'll start moving into phase 2 to do the exterior lots. And I'll get into some of the details of what is necessary to be a Firewise community, as well as follow Scottsdale City of Scottsdale Fire Code. What we'll do is prepare a community wildfire protection plan. We had an initial meeting with this group that I'm discussing to just kind of go over some of the not only code, but at the same time, what are the invasive species? Why are we removing these? What is the NAOS, and how do we get through the NAOS issues that are on our properties? Go ahead, next slide. So as you can see in this picture, this guy has a pretty good defensible space with a lot of concrete. And if you notice, his trees that right by that fire are all limbed up really proper, right? About 4 to 6 feet. If you look back, the fire is actually pretty ways back there. If the fire was to meet up to that concrete right underneath those trees, the intensity of that fire, due to the defensible space that's provided, not only in the tree area, but also the concrete area, the intensity would lay down. It would be a much less strong fire, and we'd be able to not only extinguish it, or not only bump it off of that property, but possibly extinguish it and take care of it completely. So the next slide. Now, here is no defensible space other than the road. So the demonstration of this picture is that those fire flame lengths are probably 20 feet tall and are in some pretty medium fuels with some light flashy fuels. So this fire is going to move really fast, but it's going to stop right there at that defensible space and probably won't reach the plant life that's in the middle. Go ahead, next one. So what is defensible space, and how do we know the amount to clear? So homes with a lot defining or backyard walls. So if you have a home that, whether it's in an interior lot or whether it's in an exterior lot overlooking a drainage or a wash, or whether it's looking at the mountains, whatever the case may be, your backyard wall is your defining spot. So from your backyard wall, from a defensible space perspective, we want to remove the first 5 feet of all ladder fuels, grasses, and small plants down to mineral earth. So you're going to have 5 feet of kind of a little bit of a trail, like a roadway. Do not remove any of the cactus or the mature trees, and then raise those tree canopies up to 6 feet. The reason that first initial immediate zone of the 5 foot is there is not only to protect the home and the backyard area from actual fire impingement, but more importantly, it gives us, from a combat perspective, I can get crews back there. I can get hose lines back there. I can do a lot of work and knock down a lot of fire if I don't have a lot of things in my way. And more importantly, from a firefighter safety perspective, it gives me the opportunity with that 5 foot clearance to have an exit route, and at the same time take me right to my safety zone. So from that 5 feet, we still want to take out some material. So we want to do the next 15 from the 5 feet and remove all dead and dying plant life and tree material. We want to thin the plants or separate them to a minimum of 2 feet of separation from each other. We want to raise the tree canopies at least to 4 feet, of course, not remove any of the cactus. So that 15 foot also you take out the invasive plants, you take out the grasses that are the main carrier of the fire. You limb up those trees so that the fire is really building energy through a significant amount of choked fuel that you can't touch, because you can't touch that portion of the NAOS. Once it reaches that extended zone at the 15 foot mark, which is a total of 20, it will lay down from an intensity perspective. And chances are, as it creeps through that 15 foot, once it reaches the 5 foot, we've got 0 to none to no fire. Now, if some embers have come through, got up into those trees, that still gives us, from a direct attack perspective, a really, really, really good opportunity to knock that fire down, extinguish it completely, or get it completely out of the way of your house. So that's why that 5 foot is so important. And then the 15 foot with a total of 20 out from your back wall into the NAOS takes that intensity away, decreases that ember storm significantly, and puts us in a better position from the home ignition zone. Next slide. So the next slide, this is a terrible slide. So basically, this is the easiest way to look at it. So homes with a lot defining or backyard walls, just like I explained, remove all ladder fuels, grasses, and small plants with the goal of creating a 5 foot walkway around your fence. Do not remove the cactus from mature trees. Raise the canopies to 6 feet. Remove all invasive plants. So you're going to want to have, there might be a Palo Verde tree in there that's trimmed up nice to 6 feet off the ground, limbed up. There might be a mesquite. There might be a saguaro. You can't remove those things, but giving us that 5-foot defensible space initial immediate zone, that it gives us that opportunity to get those firefighters back there safely. And at the same time, we can get a quick attack on that fire and clean it up. Then as far as the next 15 feet, as explained in the last slide, remove all the dead and dying plant and tree material, thin the small and larger plants to a minimum separation distance. So we want good separation continuity with 0 dry grasses in between, because like I said before, that main carrier of fire are those dry grasses, and that's what we want to get rid of, all those invasives, and then limb up those trees at least up to 4 feet. I like to see them at 6, and then don't remove any of the obvious cactus and indigenous plant life. Okay, next one.
One second here. There you go.
Okay. So how to identify your dedicated NAOS. So every resident can go on to the Scottsdale website at scottsdaleaz.gov and search parcel information maps. In that, you'll be able to bring up your actual parcel, your actual lot, and you'll be able to see where your NAOS is within your lot. Now, the beauty of the Firewise program is it just doesn't matter how much NAOS you have, because what we're really looking for is that 20-foot total defensible space, the 5-foot down to bare mineral earth, and the 15-foot out dead, dying, and invasive plant life. But this gives you a good overview for yourself as residents to see what your NAOS looks like on your lot. Go ahead, next slide. So the Firewise program, how does it work? So there's 5 community requirements and standards. Number 1, create a Firewise committee and board, which has already been established through Brett and the HOA. Complete a community hazard assessment and create a Firewise plan. I believe I sent the Firewise community hazard assessment over to Brett. And once that's completed, we started a rudimentary process of the Firewise plan, utilizing the initial lot abatement that has been done over the past several years as a phase 1 of completion, and going into a phase 2 from a perimeter perspective, from a resident centric piece more so. That will all be documented, and that will all be put within the plan. And then we will send that plan off to the NFPA for approval and approval for the Department of Forestry and Fire Management here in Arizona. Hold a Firewise Day event annually. We can consider the initial Firewise Day the meeting that I had with the board and Brett. But my suggestion, and we discussed this at the meeting, was to have sometime during the spring or fall a ice cream social or a barbecue or something that brings the community together to give them the understanding of the reason that Firewise works so well. And in that, we can bring fire trucks up, we can have a question and answer period, and really get some good response. Invest a minimum of $24,000 per household annually in a local wildfire mitigation projects. All that means is that Firewise USA at the federal level requests that at least $24 spent, whether it be in sweat equity or whether it be in paying your landscaper per household is hit. So, and I can't remember how many homes are in Scottsdale Mountain, but that would average out to, you know, a small amount considering what it costs from your landscaping in terms of your landscaping and the private landscaping that the residents will do. And then submit and complete a Firewise community plan and application. And that's something that I will do for you. I will write the plan. I will walk the perimeter. We'll make sure everything's working good, and then I'll send it off to the NFPA. Next slide. Okay, so what is defensible space? As you can see, as the picture on the left is completely choked right up against that view fence. And if that was to catch on fire, it would produce a significant amount of energy and a significant amount of embers, and it would just blow all over your roof. And the possibility of igniting a house fire is very high. So what we like to do is the picture on the right. That's Firewise right there. It's not a moonscape by any stretch of the imagination. It's kind of decent landscaping, to be quite honest, and it looks like beautiful desert. But you have that 5-foot defensible space and that 15-foot that goes out past that Palo Verde. Next slide. Same thing here. You can see that the canopy has been limbed up and that they have 5 and 15 very well established. The beauty of this is you can see just from the visual that how that fire intensity would just drop down once it got out of that thick choked brush. So it really is about just taking that intensity and from away from the fire, so we can get those firefighters back there and get that thing knocked down. Next slide. A couple of befores and afters here. Obviously left as before, completely choked up. After, nice and clean. At fire would move very rapidly through the left picture. Through the right picture, it would move very slowly. Next. Same here on the right, or excuse me, on the left. That fire got into that jackpot, it would just blow up, and it would just be some kind of intense fire, like when the second picture that I showed you originally with the fire. You look on to the right, that fire is going to move slow. It's not going to get up into those trees. There's just it's just easy to contain, knock down, and keep them away from structures. Next. Okay, let's talk about some invasive species. So I talk about removing invasive species within the immediate zone and the extended zone, which is the 5-foot and the 15-foot. Desert broom, and I'm sure you all have seen this plant. Desert broom is an indigenous plant. It belongs in Arizona, but the problem with it is absolutely positively one of the most invasive plants that we have out there. It will take every bit of nutrient. It will take every bit of water. It will take everything away from any plant next to it, to the point where it will just grow prolifically. And as you can see, just driving through the northern Sonoran Desert, we have tons of this stuff. When it catches on fire, it explodes. It's not as bad as chaparral, the California fuel model, but it is really bad. It's oily, it burns fast, it burns hot, and the intensity of the fire is high. So it's very difficult for firefighters to get control of that, and it puts them in a dangerous position. Next. Same thing with salt cedar. We see a lot of this in the bottom of drainages because it just takes all of the water. These two are the two most prolific when it comes to our invasive species, mostly desert broom, but these have to be removed utterly and completely. Next one. Fountain grass. This is an interesting invasive plant. This was brought in by landscapers years ago to beautify landscapes, and then it proliferated throughout the balance of the valley, if not the whole entire Phoenix Basin. This burns rapidly and moves quickly, and once it's clumped together in a choked position, it can go like wildfire. It is just out of control. So we like all that removed. Desert broom, salt cedar, fountain grass, buffalo grass, globe chamomile, or stinknet it's called. All of those invasives need to come out, because once that summer sun hits them, they just become dry, flashy fuels. They're the main carrier of fire, and they're the ones that hook into those heavier fuels like the Palo Verdes and the mesquites that make conflagrations to the point that the intensity is too much for us to take on as a direct attack, just simply because it's absolutely too dangerous, and it becomes an air show. And what we like to do is we like to get a direct attack. If we can get these things knocked down quick, sure, we're going to put helicopters, we're going to put fixed wing in the air, especially if this is going to be a campaign fire. But if we can knock these things down small and get them away from these homes, we have won the war. So invasive species, no bueno. Next. This is a video that we should probably go back to the video if you can, because I don't know if it'll play or not. Maybe not. There you go.
Try.
Yeah, see if we can do it. It gives a lot of good visuals. If it doesn't, well, I can always send the link to, or you can grab the link off of there and send it to the residents. There we go.
Sure if you're hearing anything.
I can't hear anything.
Okay. Yeah, I might have a.
Well, worst case scenario, like I said, Brett,
Yeah.
you have the link right there. You can send the link to the residents, and the residents can see basically what the video is it's a video we did with Ancala Country Club. They're one of our flagship Firewise communities. They've been a Firewise community for quite some time now. They've done a great job with it, an amazing job from a professional management perspective, as well as an HOA resident leader perspective. And in that video, not only does it show you how defensible space is created and from a visual perspective, but at the same time, you'll get two small interviews from the resident leader there, and as well as the HOA, or excuse me, the professional management person. They do a great job. They're fantastic, and I never like to reinvent the wheel if someone is doing a fantastic job, and Ancala is doing a fantastic job. So I always send every single one of the potential Firewise communities, even if they've been doing work like Scottsdale Mountain's been doing for years now, to Sandra over at Ancala to just assist to put a framework together. So I would definitely send this YouTube video out to your residents as soon as you can. Go ahead, next slide.
Yeah, definitely. And I will post this presentation and the video clip
Awesome.
On our website this week.
So in conclusion, you know, the Scottsdale Fire Department has a Firewise team. It's put together. It's our community risk reduction division. It's put together with 3 captains, like I said, that supervise 5 inspectors and 7 volunteers. And we have we haven't even finished our first year as a community risk reduction division, but we have just been going and going and going. We currently have 12 active Firewise communities in the city of Scottsdale, with 2 of them working on regaining their Firewise designation, as they kind of slipped a little bit. So they're moving towards that, and it's not a big deal when it comes to the actual process of becoming Firewise in Scottsdale. In my opinion, Scottsdale Mountain is qualifies currently just because of the work that has been done over the past several years. But now we just have to complete it up through a phased process, which will take a number of years. And that is something that the National Fire Protection Association, as well as Department of Forestry and Fire Management here in Arizona, as well as Scottsdale Fire, we understand that. We understand the fiscal side of it. We understand the budgeting side of it. And so we write our fire plans with that in mind, and we work with that Firewise team in Scottsdale Mountain to get it to be palatable for not only the residents, but or not only the actual board and management, but the residents as well. And I'd like to leave it with the most important thing here is the preserving of property. We're not going to be able to preserve a lot of that desert if we get a campaign fire here in Scottsdale. But what we really need to preserve is the life safety of our citizens, and at the same time, the homes that they've worked so hard to get. And so we're really dedicated to helping everybody out here. But as I spoke to Brett and the group the other day, my opinion, because of the work that's already been done, I'm going to start the process from a planning perspective, and we'll come out and do a site visit like we talked about, and kind of establish where phase 2 will start, and then go from there. So I'm excited about it. Scottsdale Mountain is been doing a great job for all these years, and now let's get some recognition for you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate the presentation. I think it's a lot of fantastic information to kind of show where we're at now at Scottsdale Mountain, and also the next steps going forward. So I think you have a little time, Captain Hunter, for a few
Absolutely.
questions.
You bet.
Fantastic. So if you should be able to unmute yourself. I know most of you don't have your video on, which is fine. If you do, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, if you unmute yourself, I will. If two of you talk at the same time, I will call on one of you. But anybody have any questions?
Yes. So Brett, this is Dan Kahn. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
So first of all, Fire Chief, thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Actually, you brought up a number of things that raised questions in my mind. But let me start here. First of all, we keep talking about NAOS space. You know, I had a conversation with Fire Chief Zimmerman a couple of months ago, because we moved in here 2 years ago, and I have space along the side of my house and behind me that I always assumed was NAOS because it's beautiful desert. And he pulled up the plat in a conversation that we had, and he said, your space is not NAOS, it's tract G, and it's just drainage space. So, and given that, he felt like, you know, he said, you should be able to trim that. And I've looked at the roadways here. You know, I was curious about the comment about a 10-foot space at roadways. I mean, all of our roadways are tract A. They're not NAOS, if I'm reading these plats correctly. And I think, you know, there's just tremendous confusion about what truly is NAOS. And I know you gave us a guide to go in and identify that, but my point is that I think we need better clarity, and the HOA board needs better clarity around what is NAOS and what isn't NAOS, because, and maybe I'm misinformed, but my impression is that if it's not NAOS, there is more, we have more, call it liberty to trim. And by no means do I want to remove any cactuses. Don't get me wrong. I've actually added a cactus in my yard because I lost a giant one in the storm last summer. But, you know, we're living in an environment today where we had these huge rains last year after years of drought. And, you know, the space in my mind has gotten really densely overgrown. And, I'm very aware of it because I run in the neighborhood here and I see what's going on. And for example, when I run along Cactus to exit and go out onto the street, that whole circle is so overgrown along the road. It looks like those examples that you teed up on the left-hand side of the picture, you know, of the screen. And it's a concern because, again, to me, I don't see how that is not, we're not putting ourselves at risk. So, but I don't want to dwell on that. I just want to make the point that I think there's a lot of space here that is not NAOS, and we need to understand how that space should be treated versus the 5 and the 20-foot or 5 and 15-foot rule for NAOS space. I think that's really important. The other thing I'd like to point out, when we talk about invasive grasses, totally with you on that, but there's some invasive grasses, there's some invasive plants here, they're native, and they are, in my mind, weeds. They are a nightmare. And I'm talking about these creosote plants and the brittle-bush plants. And those need to be thinned, and they're not being thinned. And again, whether it's NAOS or not, those plants are, they just grow out of control. I actually was just out a little bit before the call this evening, and I looked at one of my neighbor's lots. The brittle-bush plants have just about completely overtaken their space, which is tract G space. And it isn't simply a matter, in my opinion, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, those plants are on top of each other. They're growing over cholla plants, and they actually drown out the chollas, which I love cholla plants, even though they're nasty plants, right? I mean, they stick you, but still, we know those to be real cactuses, and we don't want to lose those. And we do lose them sometimes because of the brittle bush and the creosote plants. So I just feel like we need some clarity around how we should trim those, whether it's in NAOS space or not, because in my mind, I would put those in the classification of invasive plants, despite the fact that they're native. So, and I guess I'll leave you one other thought, because I don't want to hog the time, and I know we have limited time. And that is that, I hope everything that we're describing here, that the landscapers that work for the HOA understand this to be their responsibility, because frankly, you're looking at a guy who's out trimming non-NAOS space because it sits next to my land because I want to reduce the fire risk. And it's not fun doing it, but I just feel a responsibility to be proactive in doing it. And the landscapers were out here a week ago trimming someone else's lot, and I pulled them over to my lot and I pointed out the invasive grasses, and they said, "Oh, we're not scheduled to do that today." I mean, and I get it. I mean, they have limited time and they're on a, they have a plan for that day. But I just think there's a lot of issues out here that need addressing. And again, starting with what is NAOS and what isn't, and how does that change the rules of engagement with respect to trimming. So I will shut up, but thank you for listening.
Sure, absolutely. So let's start with NAOS. So NAOS, I brought a map of the entire Scottsdale Mountain community with an overlay of the NAOS as a color piece. So a brown overlay that just lays on an aerial map of the actual community. It's pretty significant. It's significant throughout the balance of the entire all of North Scottsdale. There are properties like yours, Mr. Kahn, that have no NAOS, have zero. And then there are properties that are all NAOS.
Right.
How that is chosen is through the planning department here at the city. And the planning department is really the overseer of the natural area open space. We used to never be able to, as from the fire department, we used to never be able to touch anything within the NAOS. So if you had NAOS all the way up to your wall and your whole lot was NAOS, you could do nothing to it. It took several years and two fire marshals to get planning to move for the defensible space of the 5 and 15. That's what we have currently. Now, within the NAOS, all invasives can be removed, but it's very strict. So we got the 5-foot defensible space immediate zone. We've got the 15-foot dead and dying extended zone. We've got then the NAOS and the balance of your lot. Past that 20 feet, you can't do anything with the NAOS except remove invasives. This is a planning department issue. We're very happy that we've been working with them closely to get us to the point where we can put 20-foot defensible spaces around our homes. But it's something that they're very, very serious about. Regarding the brittle bush and the creosote, yeah, indigenous, yeah, they do get prolific, especially the brittle bush, and they'll clump together into one large clump. But within the 5 and 15, creosotes can be trimmed, brittle bush can be separated. They just can't be removed, and that's per planning and per city code. We don't want to get anybody into a code violation by any stretch of the imagination. So I hear your frustration, and I understand what you're saying regarding these plants, especially the brittle bush. It really, really gets thick, but we have to stick with what the planning department gives us, and that's that 5 and 15, and it's been known to work as far as, like I said, taking that intensity down. Also with the NAOS, that scottsdaleaz.gov and the parcel information, that will give you quality NAOS guidelines, quality NAOS lines. The landscapers, we have currently trained 8 landscaping companies to the Firewise assessor designation. I will be more than happy to send those 8 landscaping companies with their contact information out to Brett. Brett can send them out to the residents, and the residents can utilize these folks. They don't have to utilize these landscaping companies, but they all have been trained. If you have a question with landscapers, specifically they're not doing it right or they're doing something wrong within the NAOS, give me a call, drop me an email. I'll meet with you and your landscaper. I'll walk your perimeter of your home, and I'll show you how your defensible space should be set up. And that's every resident in Scottsdale Mountain. So no problems there, but we just can't budge on those NAOS.
So, but Fire Chief,
And
what
I can
about
say,
what about non-NAOS space? Again, I'm on a
Do anything, you can do anything you want.
I can do anything I want.
Yep, that's yours.
Okay.
It's
Well,
yours.
It's not mine. It's the HOAs.
It's the
I mean,
HOAs.
yeah.
But when I say it's yours, the land that's in the NAOS on your lot, that's your land. You just can't do anything to the fauna, or excuse me, I'm sorry, the flora of it, past the 20 total feet.
Yeah. So,
And-
I mean, this is a conversation I need to have with Brett or whomever about, you know, pieces of tract G land that are not being touched by the landscapers, because I don't know if they think they're NAOS. Or what.
They probably think it's NAOS.
Yeah, and I mean they're way overgrown.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and I will say that is, you know, a big part of this process for us from our side is our landscapers are obviously working with us through this whole process. So it's identifying the NAOS areas and putting together that plan of how to treat each. So that is our part, is handling it from our side, and then Captain Unders talked about, you know, what you're able to do from yours. But I do see Steve had his hand up.
Yeah, Steve, a question just to get clarity to everybody, if there's a simple way we can describe this, because our neighborhood has, you know, standard homes that are side by side built, custom homes. We've got both standard and custom homes that border NAOS and that don't border NAOS. Can you just kind of walk the general rules? If somebody's got a custom home that's bordered by NAOS, is that the subdivision that can do that, or is that the homeowner that does that? If it, you know, are there rules of thumb that people know this is my job, or right, this is something that is clearly left to the subdivision? Is there a way you can bring some clarity to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So each individual home in Scottsdale Mountain is on a lot. So I'm assuming that each one of those lots are privately owned. So from a responsibility perspective of Firewise compliance, it would be, if that lot is yours as the private resident, that lot is your responsibility. It doesn't matter if you're up into the canyon and you're right up against the McDowell Mountains, or if you're down into the interior lots. That responsibility is the resident's responsibility. Now, it really goes down to the basics. That 5 and 15. We got to remember that total 20-foot defensible space with the immediate zone of 5 and the 15 or in the extended zone is 15. That's what we can do if there is NAOS land involved as a resident. HOA, if the HOA owns a drainage, or HOA owns a common area or whatnot, that's the HOA's responsibility from road abatement as far as that 10 feet off the roads, and or if they so choose, and it's NAOS land, and even if it's not, they so choose to remove the invasives out of there, they can. They don't have to, that's not required, but each person or each individual landowner is responsible for their land. So if the HOA owns a particular a chunk of land, that's their responsibility from the Firewise side. If a resident owns a particular chunk of land, even if it goes out into the NAOS, into the McDowells, that's their responsibility behind their lot, is that 5 and 15. Is that clear as mud?
Yes, the mud is clear, because I think every resident likes to know, okay, when I look over my wall and I see the desert butting up against my wall, is that something that the association is going to take care of, or is that something that I have to take care of? And how does every resident, how is that any resident going to be able to easily understand where the subdivision where the association's responsibility ends and theirs begins, or vice versa. That's, I think, one of the challenges we have when we've got all this land cutting in various areas and all different types of housing.
Sure. Go up on the city site, pull up your lot, see where your lot lines lie, especially the customs or that are up against the mountain. See if you own that land past your fence, because remember, we start that defensible space behind your fence. If you own that land behind your fence, if you own it only 20 feet, that's your responsibility. If you own it 150 feet out into the desert, you're still only going to concentrate on that 20 feet. Now, if you so choose to remove invasives in that 100 feet that you still own in that NAOS land, that's your land. You can remove the invasives, but nothing else. So it's very strict to keep within that 5 and 15. We've got to keep that within the NAOS, and each resident can look up, like I said, their address and see where their lot lines lie, as well as the NAOS overlays.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On one side of our lot, it's very narrow, and I didn't even know what NAOS meant. Turn that down now. I didn't know what it meant. My husband's got his on too, and it's blowing back in my ear. Anyway, in the back, we have a big area. And of course, we're going to look up our lot size because we do use landscapers privately. But over in between the house to the east of us, I don't think it's more than 10 or 12 feet. And it's really growing up due to all the rain. And I was always under the impression we weren't allowed to walk in there, because when we moved in, by the old HO, at least, we were told we couldn't go in those areas. So a lot of what you're discussing tonight is really helpful to know. And I thank everyone that's put this together and the fire department. But I'm a little scared about it because it's so overgrown. So do you call the HOA and ask them to take a look at it, or what do you do? And my name is Judy. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Judy. So my suggestion would go to scottsdaleaz.gov, look at parcel information and pull up your lot. You'll just pull it up with your address. Pull up your lot and then see on that side where those lot lines are. You might be responsible for 7 feet. He might be or he or she might be responsible for 10 feet, depending on who owns that property on the side. But it's very distinctly put within the LIS program that I'm sending you to. If it becomes more confusing, and I understand that, because I have heard so many people, oh, you can't do anything in the NAOS. It used to be that way. It's not that way anymore, but we only get 20 feet. So, but I'd be more than happy, or one of my colleagues would be more than happy to come up and do an assessment at anyone's home and take a quick look. It takes about 15 minutes to walk the house or to walk the lot and to kind of get the idea. We'll bring up a printed copy of that lot, and we'll see the lot lines and we'll see the NAOS lines. So start with yourself, start with scottsdaleaz.gov. And then if it becomes more confusing, definitely have Brett give me drop me a line and we'll take care of that.
Yeah, and I'm obviously more than happy to help, determine the lot lines and all that information as well. So feel free to reach out to me.
Very good.
Thank you. That would be great.
Fantastic. Did we have any other questions?
Let me ask another question, if I may. And this doesn't even affect me, but I'm thinking about my neighbors here, which is, to your example, Fire Chief. Let's say a neighbor has a lot that bumps up against the wash, because the washes are NAOS. I think that's pretty clear. But if their lot line stops before the NAOS, then who's responsible for the 5 and the 15-foot rule? Is it the homeowner or the HOA to clear it?
So so let me make sure I understand you.
Okay.
So you're saying that it's 2 lots with a drainage in between, a wash in between.
Well, it's one lot, okay, and there could be 2, but it's one lot, and it backs to the wash. But the lot line, the homeowner only owns the lot. He doesn't. That person doesn't. His lot does not encroach on the NAOS, and his line stops. so that he's not in the NAOS. He's just a lot that borders on a wash. So my question is, the 5 and 15-foot rule, who's responsible for administering that, the homeowner or the HOA?
The homeowner is responsible for the 5 and 15 within his lot line. If the past his lot line is determined that the HOA is the property owner, then the HOA is responsible for it.
Okay.
So we got to be very careful with washes, and you have a really choked one or two up there, because we have to worry about erosion issues. And Brett, you and I and Steve and the balance of the team will talk about this as we get farther into it. We like to get our stormwater department involved in that, just simply because, and there's no cost to that. They're like us. Their city services, they'll come up and they'll analyze that drainage from a hydro engineering perspective, because we don't want to have erosion issues. So we're very careful within our, and this is not part of your question, Mr. Khan, and I apologize, but I just want to make sure that no matter who owns that drainage, and we're going to do some mitigation in that drainage. Let's say we have stormwater come out, we have them take a good look at it, so we don't do the wrong things as residents, and we don't give you the wrong information as the fire department.
Okay, thank you. Hey, one other thing. What about homeowners that have trees that are grossly overgrown on their lots, and they drape over onto the street? And some of them are not indigenous plants either. They don't even belong here in the first place. I mean, is there anything that the HOA is responsible for informing a homeowner to, first of all, I guess, to think they're going to get them to remove a tree is not, that's a real reach, but at least trim back some of the, even mesquites, that I love mesquite trees, but some of these are so overgrown, and to me, they do pose a risk.
So, I mean, I can say, as far as this is concerned, the fire abatement, obviously that will be part of the messaging and program that we put together through this are those trees that are bordering these NAOS or wash areas. Just in general over sidewalks and things like that, that's more of a compliance issue that we handle. So, yeah. But I will, we have a bit of time left. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
For anyone else?
I have a question. Sure. Yeah, I went to the ScottsdaleAZ.gov website, and I'm trying to find exactly where that parcel information is. Can you give me a little bit more guidance, because I'm not seeing it pop right out?
Did you put it in the search bar?
No, I just went into the website. I'm in the city of Scottsdale.
Yeah, it is ScottsdaleAZ.gov. And then if you can't find it as far as just a link, just go to the search bar and type parcel information. That should bring you to our GIS site.
Yeah, and it should be one of the first response when you get that, the City Map Center, and that'll bring you in.
There you go.
And it gives you the link to the parcel information, and that launches the map system that Captain Hunter is mentioning.
Yeah.
But we'll post, when I post this to the website with the presentation and everything, I'll make sure to pull out that link specifically so you can easily access it.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Did we have any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick one.
Yeah,
Kent. Yeah, my name's Kent. Just curious with the Firewise stuff. It seems like the insurance companies would love that. I was just curious if you've heard of any insurance companies giving discounts on homeowners insurance for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I know for a fact that USAA gives a 30% discount when it's a Firewise community. Once it's a recognized Firewise community nationally, USAA gives a 30% discount. My suggestion, and that's the one I know for sure. My suggestion always is once Scottsdale Mountain is a Firewise community, I would call your agent and I would say, hey, listen, we're a nationally recognized Firewise community in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm looking to see if I can get discounts on my homeowner's insurance. And for the most part, they'll work with you. Now, I know USAA, they deal with the military, and that's that great. It's a great company because they deal with the military, but they're all great companies out there, and they should be able to give you a discount. And I've heard up to 30%.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ken. Jane?
Yes, please. I have a question. I have
Yeah,
two.
of course.
First of all, I'm most concerned about the invasions of fountain grass and buffalo grass. Not nearly enough is known about these. Residents don't even know. There needs to be a lot of education on our Scottsdale Mountain website. There needs to be links for flyers brochures that have come from Tucson, where they're now the city of Tucson is doing aerial spraying because the problem's gone so bad. But we have serious invasions of fountain grass. We've had them for 15 years, and now, and then in the past 5 years at least, we've had at least 3 invasions of buffalo grass. And these are the worst things. And the landscapers don't have a clue on how to mitigate the problem. They do not understand. The landscapers need to be educated to dig out the fountain grass, dig out the buffalo grass. They just chop. And when they chop, it stimulates more growth. And also they don't realize that these 2 invasive plants grow underneath the brittle bush. And so when they get a work order to remove some buffalo grass, they'll chop it, but they will not touch any brittle bush. They do not understand the fact that these things live together, that the grasses thrive underneath the brittle bush. So we've got to, if we want to prevent fire, you've got to remove some brittle bush. You've got to tell the landscapers to remove the brittle bush that's right near the buffalo grass or right near the fountain grass. That makes sense?
Yeah, and hi, Jane, how are you?
Yeah.
So it does make sense, and you are correct. And we are talking, I met the landscape foreman recently, and we'll have a discussion as we move forward with the HOA side of it, meaning what the HOA is responsible for. And we'll put out more education that you're talking about. The problem with that overspray within the city of Tucson or anything like that, we can't do that in the city of Scottsdale just simply because of the NAOS and the ESL.
I know that. That's
that
why
can't
I'm
be done.
saying what I'm
So
saying.
we've got to
You can't
educate the
spray it.
landscapers.
You've got to educate the land.
Right.
They've got to dig.
Yes, they do. And that's something that in putting together our Firewise program here in Scottsdale Mountain, that's something that we're really going to look at and really explain to the landscapers. And like I said, if there's a private landscaper that's just doing onesie twosies as far as houses go, I am more than happy to come up and guide that landscaper into what he or she can remove and what they can do. The brittle bush is a touchy subject. Everybody hates the brittle bush because it just clumps and it grows the invasives underneath it. And you're absolutely right. But we can separate that out, because remember, the big thing is removing these grasses and separating out these indigenous. We separate out these indigenous and they have no main carrier between them, then that fire is not going to intensify and we're going to knock it down quick. And
Exactly.
so that's
Right.
the case. And this, Jane, this will become an education piece over the next several years for
Right.
the residents that move into Scottsdale Mountain and the residents that are currently living in Scottsdale Mountain.
One more question. Another thing is the jumping cholla is a huge problem and much worse now than it was 27 years ago when I first moved here. It's what happens is that it's kind of like maple trees or oak trees or whatever. Every year, seasonally, the wind blows and these new little cacti blow off as much as 50 feet. And they where you had one cactus, you maybe got 10 cacti now. And there's no way if the jumping cholla is within 5 feet of someone's property, there is no way that you guys, your crew, could get in there because ouch.
No, and I want those removed on that 5 and 15. They're not saguaros, and
Exactly.
so my suggestion is, especially because they drop the pods so
Yeah.
readily, is to get the pods up, trim it out as best we can, because they are a beautiful Sonoran Desert plant, but we just need to keep it maintenance. We need to, this is all really Firewise is about maintenance. It's about reducing the fuel load. It's just about taking that intensity away, and we'll work towards those things as we work together with Brett and the team at Scottsdale Mountain.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jane.
And one more thing too. The jacuzzi is where we've got a major infestation of buffalo grass. Well, that's not on anybody's lot. It's by the jacuzzi. It's by the spa up at the Ramada. It's a huge infestation with that tree that you mentioned that's an invasive. What is it called?
Desert broom.
Salt cedar.
Oh, salt cedar, yeah.
Salt cedar. Yeah.
Tamarisk.
Yeah, tamarisk. And the landscapers don't have a clue about that either. They do not know what to do about tamarisk. In fact, so how can we get this done before the seeds spread and spread and spread, and it just multiplies? How can we get how can we get something that's going to remove the buffalo grass, not just chop.
I want to answer that just really quickly from buffalo grass perspective, Brett, and then I'll let you handle the spa thing, because that's very HOA. The buffalo grass thing is going to be a dig and chop thing. I am working with planning to try to allow for pre-emergent to be put down within the extended or the immediate zone and the extended zone of every defensible space. They're not going for it yet, but I've heard that the door is cracked open. So I asked, is the door is open? He says it's cracked. So currently we can't use any kind of pesticide, or excuse me, herbicide within the NAOS, but we're working towards making it a little bit better. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to use pre-emergent. Right now we cannot. So it is a mechanical removal.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And yeah, again, I would just clarify that this is a process, not just from the city of Scottsdale or not just from the owners, but I think all of us combined, and the landscape team, the board, myself, obviously Captain Hunter as well. We're all working together to create this plan as we move forward. And it's not just the immediate plan, but it's how we maintain it for the future. So all those things are things that we're going to discuss, find out what the best way to handle them are and create that plan to take care of them.
So Brett, what can we as homeowners do to help? I mean, I can send you pictures all day, but I don't want to inundate you with pictures. But I mean, you can drive up 136th Place and look across where Sharon and Steve live. That whole slice of land there, Tract A, is all ridiculously overgrown with invasive plants. So I mean, what can we do to help identify scenarios and kind of prioritize things?
Yeah, I think that we're fairly well aware of those areas. We know the areas that are a concern and the ones that we need to focus on. The idea of this is really, like I said, creating that plan of the NAOS versus non-NAOS and what we, from a fire perspective, need to do to ensure that they're all defensible zones and zones that the fire department will be able to access if needed. So that's what we're doing on our end. Obviously, the homeowner end right now is really checking your land, and that's what Captain Hunter's mentioned is looking at your lot, seeing where the lot lines land, and if you do have some of that space, taking those measures yourself per whether it's NAOS or not, creating those defensible zones. But more information on that obviously will come out as well to all the owners, not just the ones here in attendance tonight. So we'll definitely be putting more information out on what you should be doing as a homeowner, and also what we're doing as the HOA to tackle our areas as well.
Can we get a copy of the presentation that the fire chief?
Of course.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll post it on the website by the end of this week. So
okay.
It'll be posted on there with all the links and the presentation as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if we have any other questions, but I would again just really like to thank Captain Hunter for spending the time to meet with us tonight. It's really been great. I know I'm learning more and more every single day as we go through this, so it's fantastic, and we really look forward to working through this program.
Yeah, we appreciate that he was so willing to do this. And, you know, as we promised at the annual meeting, we jumped on this as a board. We had the meeting with them. We scheduled tonight. We actually had the owner of the landscape company with us at the meeting last week with Captain Hunter. And so, you know, I know Jane and Daniel, you're very passionate, as are we, and we're going to do everything we can with Captain Hunter's guidance to become a full-blown Firewise community and make sure that our landscapers know exactly what they're supposed to be doing to protect the community.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I do have to leave. I don't know if you're continuing your meeting or not, but I want to thank Brett and Denise and Steve and everybody, all the residents at Scottsdale Mountain, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. So if you don't need me anymore, I will leave, and I'll hear from you soon, Brett.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks again, and thanks everybody.
You bet.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
You have a great rest of your evening.
You too.
Good night.
Bye-bye.